Welcome, everybody, to What Do You Do with a BA in Theater, presented by Dallas Summer Musical's Education and Community Partnerships Department. My name is Seth Johnson, and I'll be your host for this series. We have a very special guest today. Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I would love to. My name is Rachel Moore. Seth knows me as Rachel Dacus, but I am now recently married. My name is Rachel Moore. I went to Texas A&M University. I got a major in theater arts. Now I am living in Houston. I am teaching 5th grade math. So that'll be interesting to talk about.
5th grade math. Wow. So we're going to get back to that. But Rachel, you did something really cool right after graduation. And you moved to France to be an au pair. And I want to know more about that process and what that was like.
Yeah, so that was definitely the best thing I've ever done in my whole life. It was really inexpensive. So if you are interested in traveling to another country and living in another country for an extended period of time, being an au pair is a really, really great way to do that. I stayed in College Station, that's where Texas A&M is. I stayed in College Station for a year and worked with a theater for a year after graduating. And then after that point, I really kind of felt that it was either like go full force, sell all my stuff and move to New York and go for it, or with any money that I did have, travel. Because it felt to me like at that point, it was either like really committing to a career or exploring some things I hadn't been able to do before in my life, like traveling.
Yeah.
So I chose to travel, and I had some friends who had been au pairs before. And au pairs are basically live-in nannies. It's a really, really common thing in Europe, not as common here. You don't hear of a lot of people coming to America to be au pairs. You hear more about Americans going to live in cooler places. So I lived with a family in France, right outside of Paris. I watched their 2 kids. They were super cute and super sweet, and I helped teach them English. And the culture that I got to experience while I was there was just incredible. And I actually lived there. I always wanted to do that. I didn't want to just go like visit Europe for a week and then leave. I really wanted to live for an extended period of time in another country. And it was a really inexpensive way to do it. And it was awesome. And it gave me a chance to get to know myself a little better, because you are pretty alone in a country where you don't know anybody else and you don't exactly speak the language. It helped me become a lot more comfortable with myself, being alone with myself, and more comfortable making decisions that purely just affected me, because that was kind of what the situation was over there. Yeah, it was the best time of my life. If I could have lived there, I would have lived there forever.
That's really awesome. So how does one go about finding an au pair job?
Well, I really wouldn't have heard of it if it wasn't somebody that, if I didn't have a friend who had already done it and I had kind of asked her for guidance. So there's websites that get you connected. It's basically like, the one I used was called Au Pair World. And it's basically like, if anybody's ever done any kind of like babysitting work, how you make a profile of you and your experience like with children. And then families also have profiles. They tell you, it's more extensive because they're telling you everything about where they live, their family dynamic, the house that you'll be staying in, what are your living situations going to be. And so you kind of find one that matches with where you want to be. And then you kind of get the ball rolling. And they helped me. We had like a mediator that would help me figure out what I needed to do visa-wise. There were things that were required of both of us for different kind of citizenship reasons and tax reasons. I think that the people who let me stay there actually got like a tax break in their country. So that's cool for them. Yeah. But yeah, you kind of, once you commit to one family, we had like video calls and stuff, and I got to kind of talk to their kids and see what their house looked like and see how the kids interacted with the parents. And once you commit to somebody, you get the ball rolling and you get a visa. You are required to, as far as I know, you are required to be a student in the other country. That's how it was in France, at least. So I had to sign up for classes
Mm-hmm.
to take while I was in France. So actually, while I was in France, I would go to a college and take language classes, which was super crazy and very cool.
Yeah, I'm assuming you took French there,
I
right?
did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I had already taken some French in college. I was like 1 credit away from minoring in French, so I just tell people that I minored in French because basically I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got to take some French language classes in France, which was cool.
That's really awesome. Did you find that you had a bunch of skills that you developed within the theater world that kind of carried over to your life as an au pair?
Yeah, definitely. I really think adapting is one of the skills that I learned through theater that has helped me with most of the other things in my life, including teaching, definitely teaching, but definitely also living in France too. Kind of like being introduced to a new situation and adapting in a way that was helpful for me and helpful for other people around me. That's one, I really think that one of the most like highest leverage transferable skills from theater is adaptability. And the ability to just kind of read a situation and have a better understanding of it, because that's what we do a lot in theater when we're looking at scripts and scenes and things like that.
Yeah, so I feel like within the theater world, we really know how these things apply. How do you like translate those skills when you're applying for non-theater related jobs to like your employers, to let them know that like, yeah, theater is this, but it's also all these things, you know?
Yeah, well, you kind of just say that. So whenever I was applying for the teaching position, because to be an au pair, you didn't really have you don't have to have very many credentials. You basically just have to not be a criminal and be a trustworthy, you could prove that you're a trustworthy human being. But when I applied to the teaching job, that was basically what I did. I basically said, like, I'm really adaptable because, and then I listed XYZ. Like, no, I don't have any actual teaching experience, which I didn't at that point. But I'm obviously the easiest one is great public speaker because that's obvious. You don't really have to explain how that translates over. But yeah, like adaptability, ability to better understand people's emotions, ability to understand why people are doing the things that they're doing, that it might go deeper than what we're seeing on the surface. That's just, and I would just explain to the people I was interviewing with that that's exactly what I did in theater. So no, I haven't ever been a teacher before, but I know the importance and have practiced the importance of going deeper emotionally in order to understand why people are doing what they are doing. And that will be useful in teaching for XYZ. So yeah. Really, you just start straight. I was always just straight up about it. I was always like, yeah, I don't have any experience in this. I'm a theater major. This is what I've got. And this is how I think it'll be useful to you and your school. That's kind of what I did.
Yeah. And that's a great skill to have. I feel like, especially as high schoolers going into college, there's kind of a fear there. Like, oh man, like I majored in theater. Like, how am I going to get jobs outside of the theater world if I don't have any other job experience? And like, how do I get them to understand that I can do all these things? And just telling them, I mean, tell them. Yeah. That's just great advice. Yeah. Awesome. So how did you get into teaching? From being an au pair to teaching, what was that transition like?
Yeah, it was a hard transition because I had kind of, whenever I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. Probably because my mom was a teacher and I had a lot of teachers in my family. But once I got older in high school and then into college, I had really honestly rejected teaching it as a possibility, because something that was kind of unfortunately messaged to me was that if you're teaching, that means you're not able to do the thing you really want to do. Mm-hmm. And that was actually really hard for me. I still kind of grapple with that as a teacher, because I'm sometimes, when anxiety starts to take over, the anxious part of me starts to say, well, you gave up on your dream because you're teaching now. You threw away all the things that you could have done because you're teaching now. But that's not true at all. Mm-hmm. I think that whenever I was in college, it started to be messaged to me that I needed, and I've seen a lot of this going around on social media, I needed to monetize theater.
Yeah.
It needed to be something that could make money for me, to be viable. And I had to really come to terms with like, it's okay to not make money doing theater and do something else for a while. So then you can have money to do theater later.
Yeah.
So choosing to teach was really difficult because I still had that voice in my head that was like, if you're teaching, you're giving up on your real dreams. But the school that I had applied at was really like the perfect situation. It was a brand new school. I would be joining in on the very first year of the school altogether. So a really cool thing to get to do. And I was joining on to be a theater teacher. I was going to be there, all of their arts. I was going to teach all their arts. So I had started with theater, then we switched to music, then we switched to art. And I got to teach all of those things, which are all things that I love to do. So the situation of that specific school really stood out to me as being something that I felt would be very beneficial to me career-wise moving forward. And I thought it would be a really, really fun challenge. And like I said, I did have to kind of come to terms with me choosing to not sell everything and move to New York doesn't mean anything negative about like my love for theater or anything like that. And I really had to come to terms with that when choosing to teach. But it's been a really, really great decision. And it's an incredible career. It's really hard, but it's incredible.
Yeah. No, I get that. I love New York. I don't want to be a working artist there. Like that it is intimidating. It's a lot of work. And also like each person's path is different. And if you find like your happy place somewhere else in a different thing, that's okay. You're allowed to grow and change into new careers and new avenues in life. So that's really awesome, Rachel. How did you get to math?
Okay, so that's really fun. So I'm really good at teaching. I'm really, really good at it. I didn't know if I would be. I always felt like it was something that I would be good at, but I had never put it into practice. But February of my very first year teaching, so I had only taught for how long is that? 6 months, 5 months? The principal, who was also the founder of the school, pulled me into her office and she was like, I'm going to say something that's going to sound crazy, but I want you to consider it. And then she asked me if I would switch from teaching the arts to teaching math. And I was like, you wanted me for this conversation? Because this is not, you're asking your theater teacher to switch to your math teacher. That isn't usually in line with each other. And I pointed out to her that the maths I took in college were called Math for All Practical Purposes. That was literally the math that I took for my math credit. So not high level math user over here. And she told me really honestly that like, it actually didn't matter that I wasn't good at math. That was actually a benefit, she felt, because then I could explain math to people who also didn't understand math, which has turned out to be true.
Yeah.
And she pretty much just told me that I was the strongest teacher that they had, and the learning they were getting in math wasn't happening the way it needed to. So she needed to move her strongest person over, which was me. So it was a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Definitely took me by surprise because it's never what I intended to do. I never intended to teach math ever. But I actually am really good at it. So it was a surprising skill that I didn't know that I had. But yeah, I'm a really, really good teacher.
I mean, I don't doubt that, Rachel. Yeah. So I had a question and it's like slipped out of my mind. Yeah, well, that happens. I'm going to ask the question that I've been asking everybody before we wrap up. And that is, if you could go back to high school Rachel and give her one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Ooh, one piece of advice for high school Rachel. Be confident in what you want to do. Everybody's going to have an opinion to give to you. And if you ask them, they'll give it to you. But you need to know what you want to do. And you have to be confident and comfortable in your own decisions. Because everybody, if you ask them, everybody's going to tell you their opinion and tell you what they think that you should do. So you have to be confident in yourself and comfortable with your own decisions to make the decisions that are fruitful to your life, specifically you.
Yeah. That's great advice. That is great advice. It is hard to do, but it's definitely something that you continuously to work on and continuously to grow into. Don't worry if right away you're not just like immediately like, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be awesome. It's okay to find it along the way.
But it's important to spend the time with yourself, not only getting the outside sources.
Absolutely.
Right? It's important to spend time with yourself to know and really analyze for yourself, is this something that would make me happy? If I'm not sure, I can try it, but then I need to analyze that after and say, okay, that didn't make me very happy. So maybe I shouldn't go down that kind of road again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do you have any like tips or things that you do to like kind of help listen to yourself more and get into that mindset?
Yeah, well, I mean, I really just I try to analyze the situation very like black and white. And if there is gray area, recognize that gray area and say, okay, I know that this made me unhappy. I can see that this decision led to it, but I'm not really sure why XYZ happened. So it's okay to sit with like, I don't really know why that happened, but I can analyze things about it. I can ask myself, okay, how did I feel during that time? What decisions were made? So it's really just like self-awareness and emotional awareness.
Yeah.
Taking time to ask yourself, like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I make that decision? Which arguably goes back to studying characters in theater.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
It's really helpful. And that's kind of one of the ways that I self-reflect, is by kind of asking myself why. Like, why did I do that? Why do I think this happened? You know, not overly so, because we can do that and it can become detrimental, but just to analyze it without judging it, just analyze it.
Yeah. Awesome. I remember the question I wanted to ask now. Are you able to see or do any theater in Houston? What's that relationship like now?
Yeah, so it's hard because the hours of a teacher are really, really demanding. You know, I go in at 7 or earlier. Usually I go in at like 6:30 and then sometimes don't leave until 5. So I'm very, very exhausted at the end of the day. But if I ever see something that I can feasibly go to, like with my work schedule, I've been to a couple like open mic comedy nights that have been really fun, and like improv shows that have been really cool. And always stuff on the weekends is available to see. So like during the week runs of shows are really hard to get to, but weekend things, it's all really possible. The biggest obstacle I would say is that I've never lived in Houston, so I don't know a lot about the Houston theater scene. So I am pushing myself to really, well, not now as much because anything that's happening is virtually happening, but I was pushing myself before this happened to really seek out, like, is there a newsletter I could sign up for that's telling me I want to follow based off like other people that I'm aware of or like working with it. So I have had to do some of my own research because I'm not from here and I don't know anything about how the theater scene works here.
Yeah.
Who's big in theater here? I don't really know, except for the Alley. It's the only thing I know. And so doing my own research has kind of been the biggest obstacle, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. And I would love to, my plan is to, once everything, you know, goes back to normal life, to really, really try to audition for things, especially in the summers, because my summers are, as a teacher, we have the gift of not working throughout the summer, which is definitely it's worth all the terrible stuff you go through during the year to not work during the summer. So really focusing on like summer shows and like small runs of things during like winter or Christmas that I could definitely be a part of now that I've kind of gotten my first 2 years of teaching under my belt, and can feel more comfortable about like doing other stuff in my free time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your story and your advice with us. Your career path is amazing. It's so much fun to catch up with you and to just see what you're doing. I have like a newfound respect for teachers and educators all over. We're doing a lot of work. So, yeah. And especially right now when everything is really weird and we're just adapting to
adaptability.
This whole virtual world.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great to chat about it and talk about all this stuff.
Yes, and viewers out there, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email. We're happy to help you. Remember that Dallas Summer Musicals is a resource for you. If you need anything or if you want to see specific content, let us know. We also have a really cool new series called DSM Smiles coming out, so keep an eye out for that. By the time this video is released, actually, the first episode should be live. So you can find that on the same page you're watching this on, which is cool. And until then, stay safe, wash your hands, and have a wonderful day.